Earth, 3024. It was Alessandra's last night on Earth, for in the morning she was to depart on her midi cruise, under the command of Captain John D. Bello. For her last night, Alessandra traveled to the shore to have one last look at the ocean. However, this was no ordinary night. There was a spring low tide that evening, an occurrence that only happens when the sun, moon, and earth are all aligned, which causes the low tide to be lower than average and the high tide to be higher than average. This was a special night indeed, for Alessandra was able to glimpse this sight that only occurs once a year. The next morning, Alessandra and her fellow graduates of the Newtonian Space Academy reported for duty on what would be their home for the next year, the NSC Uranoi. Alessandra was a midshipman on the crew and was under the direction of Ensign Thayer in the engine room. As the NSC Uranoi was leaving the Earth's atmosphere, the gravitational shields went down, causing the ship to experience a pull from the Earth. This is the result of the Earth's gravitational field, or the influence that a massive body extends into the space around itself, producing a force on another massive body. The ensign and midshipmen were able to fix the ship's gravitational shields, and the NSC Uranoi was on its way. Many months had passed, and Alessandra had proven herself worthy time and again to Ensign Thayer. She had become his right-hand man. It was Alessandra's day off, and she was having a casual lunch with some of her fellow midshipmen, when suddenly the alarm sounded. Soon after, Captain Bello called everyone to their posts. Alessandra rushed to the engine room, unaware of what was happening. The NSC Uranoi had just exited hyperdrive and landed right next to the black hole. This concentration of mass resulting from gravitational collapse, near which gravity is so intense that not even light can escape, was pulling them all in. As Ensign Thayer and Alessandra rushed to direct all the power to the main thrusters, a capacitor blew to the ship's support of internal gravity. This only made matters worse. The engine room crew was now experiencing weightlessness, a condition in free fall wherein a support force is lacking. The crew's only hope landed in the hands of Ensign Thayer and Alessandra, who were currently floating around the room. The two grabbed onto anything they could, and as Ensign Thayer was directing all the power to the engines, Alessandra had to override the system to regain normalcy in the engine room. The ship was fast approaching the black hole, and all hope seemed lost. But at the last minute, Ensign Thayer and Alessandra were able to put all the power into the engines, and the pilot was able to jump into hyperdrive. The crew was safe, but the pilot did not know where they were going. At some time in the midst of the escape from the black hole, the navigation systems went down. The captain and his crew did not know where in the universe they would be. Captain Bello gave the order to come out of hyperdrive, and much to the entire crew's amazement, they had ended up in their own solar system. The ship had acquired a few damages that would take some time to fix, but overall it was in good shape. The ensign and midshipmen had gotten the crew out of danger and were able to relax, but their work was not over. It took the crew several months to make all the repairs to the ship, but at last the NSC Uranoi was ready to head home. Alessandra returned to the very same shore that she had stood on before her midi cruise, only this time she was an ensign. As she reflected on her time aboard the NSC Uranoi, the now Lieutenant Thayer joined her as they watched the sun go down. As the two were sitting on the shore, the tide began to come in. As the tide rolled in and the moon began to appear, it was clear that this too was a special night. Lieutenant Thayer and Alessandra had noticed that the tide was not as high as they had remembered. The reason for this was because the moon was midway between a new and full cycle, and the tides due to the sun and moon partly cancel, causing a neap tide. Their first adventure had come to a close, but as they gazed at the stars, they knew their next adventure was out there waiting for them.